I would like to welcome the students at Lauren University in Nigeria to a global class with students here at Durham College in Oshawa, my students. We're going to be exploring a pretty big question today about the world as a whole. So I want you to be ready for a good conversation, and we will, in a moment, begin to find out more about you in Nigeria. Here we go. Great. Okay, so hold on. Well, we might be able to do this again. Are we okay in Budapest? Can you hear? Daniel?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Good. So I think we can now let's start again. Okay. We welcome everybody to today's global class, and we are really lucky to have students from Nigeria with us. Actually, there's students from Kenya who are studying at Lauren University, one of the top universities in Nigeria, which is Africa's biggest country. And we have students, of course, from Budapest Business School in Budapest, Hungary, who've done many global classes. And we'll do some introductions in a moment. But hi, Daniel, and there are two others there as well. And we will, there's also Daniel, the second Daniel, and we'll come to you in a moment. Great. And welcome, of course, from all of my students here. And this is an empty table here for now, but this is going to be where my students will be coming to the microphone so you can hear them clearly. Because normally we pass a microphone around, but it's a bit problematic. So we're just going to keep this microphone here, and people will come here. We also have today, instead of a guest, an official guest, our guest is a flip chart. And that flip chart, you can see on your screens, is where we are going to attempt to solve a problem. And that is what the class is going to be about today, which is there's a problem that we have right now in the world. And there's no better way to engage ourselves in a conversation than to try and solve a problem. So essentially, there is no guest. I'm going to host the class, and we're going to have a discussion about this problem. And during the class, we're going to write quite a bit on that flip chart. We're going to learn together and explore this problem together. And by the end of the class, in 90 minutes, my hope is that we can begin to try and solve this problem with some good words, some wise words. Words play a very important role in today's class. Language plays a very important role. The topic of today's class is actually called resilience. Okay, and I would like to write that on. Zach, do you want to just go ahead and write on the flip chart the word, and I'll spell it out for you just so it's nice and clear. R-E-S-I-L. Great, we can see it. I-L-I-E-N-C-E. Great. So that's essentially the topic of today's class, resilience. And you kind of might be wondering, well, what is resilience? What does it mean? And who cares? And in a moment, you're really going to care. I promise you, every single person there from Kenya at Lauren University, particularly the students in Hungary right now, are really going to care. Daniel, I promise you, we had this discussion about whether this might be too abstract and too big. I guarantee you every single person is going to care about this in terms of why we need to be thinking about resilience today. And so I'm going to hold you a bit in suspense, okay, because I want to make sure that everybody's kind of listening. We've all explored this idea of resilience and complexity. So I think you're going to understand this, but here's the problem, okay? And I'm going to take it very slowly and gently because I think that we may end up having a pretty interesting, possibly intense discussion. And I'm going to moderate and help you with it. But we're going to jump into it very shortly. But let's first identify what this problem is. So, okay, here it goes. All right. How many of you have ever... I'll start in Nigeria, okay? And please give us your name when you answer, and gradually we'll get to know everybody sort of on first name basis today. In Nigeria, have you ever used a website called dictionary.com? Dictionary.com? Yeah, you kind of know dictionary. You go to online and you check meanings, say dictionary.com. In Budapest, have you ever used the website dictionary.com? You know it?
I used once. It has a blue background, right?
Say that again?
I used it once. It has a blue background, right?
Yes. I think your microphone is not working. Your hand, yeah. We're getting the audio from your camera, not from that, because it's not weak. Yeah. Let's make sure, guys, we can hear you. It's going to really matter in a moment. Okay. Okay. Try again, and just make sure.
I used it once. It has a blue background, right?
Okay. That's a little bit better, but you know what I would suggest is can we use the audio that you just had before that, but come closer to the microphone. We really need to hear you, okay? So please, Daniel, and then I'll continue with Nigeria while you're addressing that. Okay. Okay. Good. So, all right. How many of you have heard of the website dictionary.com? Okay, dictionary.com. Everyone here kind of knows. Okay, well, I'm going to start with a little story about dictionary.com, because dictionary.com just picked a word of the year. Can you hear us okay in Budapest? Yeah? Can you hear okay in Budapest? Can you hear?
Yes, can hear, yes.
Okay, good. Great. Okay. So, here's the story. Yesterday I was on the subway, taking the subway to my campus, and they'll come back. Yesterday I was on the subway, and I saw that this article appeared in a newspaper. Word of the year. So, sign of the times. Is everyone there with us? Or, can you hear okay in Budapest and in Lauren? Great. And in...
Yes.
Good. Okay, excellent. Okay. So, I would like to ask you, what do you think Dictionary.com has picked as their word of the year? Does anybody know? In Nigeria, in Budapest? We'll come here in a moment, okay?
Illiberal democracy.
Say, good, the audio is working. Okay, what's your name? Say your name again.
Benjamin.
What's your name? Benjamin, excellent. Benjamin, what do you think, could you repeat what you think Dictionary.com has picked as its word of the year? Repeat that, please.
Illiberal. Because
democracy.
It's a new term. Illiberal democracy.
Liberal democracy?
Illiberal. It's a new term, maybe.
Illiberal, like not liberal democracy?
Post-liberal, yes.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Okay, just a second. Believe me, this is all going to make sense. And it's all going to make sense in terms of resilience And by the end of this class, you're going to understand a big problem, and we're going to have some solutions. Okay, does anyone else want to try in Budapest? What do you think dictionary.com picked as the word of the year? Don't want to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with struggle.
Daniel, I can't believe it. For once, I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. You are wrong. I have never...
Happens to the best of us.
It never happens to Daniel. You're wrong. Okay. Now, in RISPA or anyone else in Nigeria, what do you think dictionary.com picked as the word of the year?
Xenophobia.
Yes.
Oh yeah, actually.
Xenophobia.
Xenophobia. Xenophobia.
Xenophobia.
Hey, Zach, do you want to write that on the flip chart? Go ahead. X.
I love that word. We have a lot of it in Hungary.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, now we know where we're going to go in today's class. This is not...
We have a lot of xenophobia in Hungary. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Hungary is the one country in Europe that has literally built a wall to keep the Syrian refugees out. So this is going to be interesting. Now, okay. So, in a moment, all of you are going to talk a lot, and I'm not going to talk much. I just want to set the problem and set the stage for all of you. First of all, since you got the word correct in Nigeria, what's your name, the student who got the correct word?
George.
George. Way to go, George.
Jordan or George?
George.
I thought it was George.
George, could you do us a favor and tell us what does xenophobia mean?
I'll just explain. I don't know the word definition, but I'll just explain what I understand. With example, I'd use the case of South Africa, like when the natives feel like the foreigners who come into their country tend to benefit in situations like businesses and all other areas, and they feel like the native people are getting more and more depressed in poverty and other things.
Okay, that's pretty good. It's not perfect. I wouldn't give you an A yet. I'd probably give you a B+ for that, but that's pretty good. Okay. We'll come here in a second. In Budapest, Benjamin, two Daniels, and what the young woman who's sitting between Daniel. What's your name? What's that? Okay, we'll come back to you. Go ahead. Daniel, what does xenophobia mean?
It's an aversion of non-native people, essentially.
Okay, microphone. Your microphone's dying again. Your microphone. Yeah, it's really. Try to get. Okay, speak a little louder. Okay.
Yeah, I just said building on what the gentleman said in Nigeria. I said it's an aversion of foreign people.
It's an aversion. It's an aversion. It's an aversion. Okay, let's write that word down on the flip chart. Aversion.
Can I add something?
Yes, A-V-E-R. Go ahead, Benjamin. Yeah, S-I-O-N. Yes.
I think xenophobia, the seeing yourself, seeing your culture is higher and more valuable than the other culture. Seeing yourself higher than others.
C+. Maybe a B. Okay, for that one. Sorry. Okay. We're not quite getting there yet in terms of really what makes this such an interesting definition. I would just like to say one thing before we come to my students. Dictionary.com is a very well-used website around the world, and they have said that this is the most searched word this year. Okay, the most searched word this year. So the fact is, xenophobia represents something that's going on in the world right now. So we need to really define it. I'm going to come to one of my students here. Does anybody want to attempt a definition here of xenophobia? Do you want, Chris? You want to just come? Yeah, come closer so we can get the microphone. And there we go. Okay, Chris.
So my definition would be an intense or irrational dislike or fear of people from other countries.
Huh. Did you hear that clearly?
Yes.
Xenophobia is an intense dislike or fear or even hatred.
You could go there.
Hatred of people from other cultures. Wow. Now this is interesting. Okay, here's the discussion. Here's the discussion I'd like to. Why in a world that seems to be getting more small and integrated, where borders appear to be disappearing, why would dictionary.com choose xenophobia as their most searched word of the year? That would mean that people around the world are trying to understand xenophobia. So I would like to ask all of us today, why in a so-called borderless world are people worried about xenophobia? And I think that's a question that we all have to deal with today. So that's what I'd like to kind of explore with all of you in Nigeria, with the students in Budapest, and with my students. Why would that be the case, and what can we do about it? And in the solution, I'm going to suggest that resilience is going to play a huge role in the solution today. And we'll get to there, okay? So we have a question. Why xenophobia? And we need to find some solutions to how we can deal with this problem. But let's first address the question, okay? So does anybody here want to attempt to answer why would xenophobia be the most searched word? Katie, do you want to come closer so they can hear you? Great. And then Carol will come and think about if you have anything to say. You're welcome to. Okay, Katie is going to attempt to answer this. So, Katie,
Okay.
you can leave it here. Yeah,
Okay,
don't worry.
sorry. I think that xenophobia is the word of the year. That how the media has made a massive input on people from different cultures all around the world. People not being fully educated and often being misled by the media.
Sure. Okay. So Katie's saying that it's the media's responsible for this. It's the media's fault, and that may be true. But okay. Does anyone else want to add here before we go off to the others? Albert, are you okay? Carol, go ahead.
I think xenophobia also is a part of the like
Katie yeah.
said, that is how the people have reactions around the world. But also it's not only from the media, but also for what is happening around the world in aspects of nature too.
In aspects of nature? Mm-hmm. How so?
For example, there has been a difference, like there have been many worries about, for example, the earthquake that struck in this little town, Italy, that had made a big mark for Italy because those are small old places, right? For many years they have been now. But I think
in Italy. And these are people in Italy?
People in Italy who lived there for many years. And these new towns are very old towns.
And then
they have been founded like maybe before the time of the Middle Ages, approximately, right?
Okay, let's stop for a second.
So,
okay.
But mostly I would say in xenophobia this is an aspect of nature, but an aspect of globally is what all we have been counted is media and nature. It's a combination of both,
okay.
in my opinion, in this.
All right, well, we'll explore it, but thanks, that's good. Okay, we'll explore, so media, nature, and also Carol mentioned something about Italy too that we may explore. But let's keep going. We're still trying to understand, in a borderless world, supposedly, with the walls coming down through technology, through communication, through transportation, through culture, how could it be that people would start to be searching to understand xenophobia, which to me doesn't make sense? But maybe I'm stupid. Okay, so let's try in Budapest. Guys, you want to take a crack at this?
Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. No, we lost you. We've lost you. Your audio again. Yeah. Go ahead. No, it's, yeah. I think that what we're going to have to do is get rid of the handheld microphone and go back to the other microphone that you had, okay? That is definitely a problem. That microphone is not working, okay? So Daniel, can you go back to the other microphone? And we'll get this resolved, okay? Let's see. Make sure. And while they're... Okay, so while you're getting connected, in Nigeria, George or Rispa or any of the other students, why do you think xenophobia, a fear, possibly a hatred of people of different cultures, would be the most sought word at a time when we're supposedly living in a borderless world? Why would people do that? What do you think?
Hello, I'm Owen.
Go ahead, Owen. Thanks.
I think the reason why it would be the most searched word because of insecurity among the natives. When we see foreigners coming to a country, we have that notion and fear that they are coming to replace maybe our economy, our education, everything. And it's insecurity that should not be there. It's a fear of the unknown. Insecurity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's great. It's Owen, right? Owen?
Owen.
Yeah, great. Let's write that on the flip chart, okay? Zach, do you want to write the word insecurity? Insecurity. Okay? So, Owen, are you from Kenya or are you from Nigeria?
Kenya. From Kenya.
Do you see in Kenya today any xenophobia?
Yes.
I know these may be difficult questions, and the truth is we've never met before. We're all meeting for the first time, so it may be hard to answer these questions honestly. But I promise you that we're doing this in a spirit of respect for each other, for education, and we're doing this to understand a problem. So that's the spirit of this class. There's no dislike of any cultures in this class, guaranteed. We are all human beings, okay? So, Owen, in Kenya, what kind of xenophobia do you see? How would you describe it?
Majorly in businesses, technology, industries, where we privatization only that people come, then they are replacing natives in fields that they should occupy. That's where I would say xenophobia apply.
In Kenya, do you have many white or Caucasian or European, or is everyone black and African there?
Very many.
There's many.
We have white, Chinese people, we have
Over
everyone.
Yeah, really.
Huh. Go ahead. Yeah, Rispa, do you want to add to that? Or the other student? Go ahead.
Yeah, hello. My name is Wendy, and
Yes.
to add on Wendy,
Yes.
to add on what Owen had said, like right now in my country, in Kenya, we find that most people, especially with, let's say, on the construction of the standard gauge railway, which was initiated with our country, with the president, he also invited outside, people from outside, especially people from China. So they came in to do their work, and so sorry, when they came,
Sure.
most of them come with their own engineers. No, it's making jobs because less for the Africans, now for the Kenyans, because they come with their own. Okay, so this one, it's making people to get intimidated and feel like they are taking over. Yeah.
Interesting. So I'll just ask one more question, then we'll come here. So in Kenya, is the relationship between the Kenyans and the Chinese kind of tense?
It's actually a warm relation. We relate very well. We exchange students, we go there, technology we exchange. Okay. Okay, natives, how we interpret it, different from a vision of the government or the people signing the contract.
Yeah.
So, okay, it's a warm. Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back. In a second. Thank you for answering these questions. They're not easy questions to answer, and we've only just started the class. So, are we ready for Budapest? Guys in Budapest, are you able to now?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes, yeah. Okay. So Daniel, please try and help us understand why in a borderless world, supposedly, we're communicating through technology. We're definitely not xenophobes. I don't think we are in this class. Maybe some of us are, who knows? But we're having a discussion. Why would xenophobia be chosen as the most sought word on dictionary.com this year?
Okay, so the thought I had when you talk about that is that you've answered your own question for most parts, because as the world became borderless through either technology or certain liberties that, for example, the Schengen Agreement that has allowed Europeans to travel freely, that has also allowed people to actually interact with other cultures. So, given the fact that they are actually permitted to interact with other cultures, that has given them reason to have a dislike seated in prejudice. Whereas prior to this, cultures or nations just exist in sort of their own world. So the borderless world that you've spoken about is what has actually given ground to xenophobia, and more importantly, I think what we need to zero in here is that while the borders may actually have disappeared, nations haven't. Nations and cultures are just as diverse and just as different as they've ever been.
Sure, absolutely. Now, for the students here and for the students in Nigeria, I'm going to ask you the hardest question, Daniel, because I know you, and we've had many classes, and I know the thoughtfulness you bring. Would you please describe to me what has your president in Hungary, your current president, done about this supposed issue called xenophobia? How has he responded to this?
I mean, come on, Lord. If you want to get me shot, there are easier ways to do it.
Good. So let's hear it. Okay. Can you tell me, what has Hungary been doing about xenophobia?
Okay, so here's the thing. I think many people would say nothing, and that would be an alright answer, I suppose. But I think for example, I think it was 3 months ago, there was actually a vote with people took, where we basically voted whether or not we would accept refugees. And the entire campaign relied on the current government, the current party, the party that's in power, saying that we should not accept anybody coming to Hungary unless they were Hungarian, which is essentially saying that, which is basically the basis for racism and xenophobia as a whole.
Sure.
Why would we mix with other people, right? So they basically ran a campaign for months based on this very simple premise. And the only reason the vote didn't pass is because there wasn't a 50% turnout. So less than 50% of the voting population turned out to vote. But 98% of those that have voted with the party, so they agreed with them.
Let me just make sure I understand. So 98% of the people who did vote, but there were not 50%. There was a fairly low turnout. But of the less than 50% of the people who voted for Hungary to keep out refugees from Syria, 98% of those said keep them out. Is that correct?
Yeah. Basically, I think the turnout was around 46, 47%. And basically, the entire vote was going against the European Union's ruling because they obviously have their own guidelines as far as refugees are concerned. And basically, this Hungarian vote and the law that it would have permitted would have gone against the guidance of the European Union. And the reason why there wasn't a big enough turnout is because pretty much every party that disagreed with this, so basically the left-wing parties, have campaigned against voting. They didn't campaign to vote with no or yes or anything like that. They basically just told people not to go because there is no way that they could outnumber people. The only way they could basically stop the vote, stop the law from being imposed. Is to basically make the vote invalid by having such a low turnout.
Okay. But nonetheless, you would agree that maybe there's a problem with xenophobia right now among some people in Hungary?
I mean,
would you say that?
Yeah, there definitely is a problem. It's not just some people. There are a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. Okay. I'm not going to single out Hungary here or you or at all. I'm going to be addressing us too. Believe me, nobody here is going to walk away from this without a bit of skin in the game, as we say. Or we are all part of this, as you're going to see. So great, Daniel. Albert, do you want to? Yeah, come. It's here. Go ahead.
I'm thinking that the reason for not allowing Syrians to come into Hungary is not so much about xenophobia, but more in a sense of perceived protection of its own country because of terrorist activity and so on. Is that more what was concerned as opposed to a culture that you may be afraid of?
No, I mean, there is basically no terrorist activity in Hungary, and if you can come to think of it, there really isn't much to do here if you're a terrorist. You can hardly make a statement in a country such as Hungary because there is very little to attack here. And also on top of that, the two biggest right-wing parties for about a decade now have ran campaigns that have dealt with xenophobic feelings toward gypsies, and that has basically shifted to refugees now. So basically the gypsy or Roma minorities are no longer their targets, it's the refugees now, because that's basically a hotter topic.
Wow. So not terrorism. They don't seem to... Now...
that would be more prevalent in the rest of Europe, though.
Possibly. Daniel, Daniel number 2. There's Daniel 1 and Daniel Sibis is number 1 and Daniel Lantos is number 2. So Daniel, go ahead, Daniel Lantos.
Yeah, I just want to say, I want to add to this that it's really easy for the Hungarian government right now to influence people's minds because most of the media outlets are so they are influenced by the
media.
By the government. So they influence the media and media influences.
Yeah.
It's really easy for them to to be,
Sure.
to communicate these thoughts to people.
Understood. Thanks, Daniel. So the media in Hungary is part of the problem, and as the way Carol was saying, there's the media. We'll come to that. I just want to make sure that we get lots of diverse opinions in Nigeria or in Kenya, where many of you are from. What do you think about what Daniel just said in Hungary? That there's a large number of people in Hungary who, have voted in a referendum to keep people out that are foreign, different. What do you think? Anyone want to try that?
From the bottom.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I think we should be having the reason that why they voted against people getting in their country. That should be the basis on how to put it, whether it is correct or wrong.
Why? Why they did that? Why? Go ahead, George.
Personally, I feel and believe that every person, every human being has a level of phobia in them. They are afraid to go. I personally, in reference to myself, I'd be afraid to affiliate myself with some other culture or something because I'm afraid what I may lose as my own and what I may gain from them. I'm getting. The Hungarian government, I really don't blame them. Because when you look at it at a bigger perspective and a bigger picture, you see 10 the reasons why they really want people in their country.
Sure.
I don't know how to explain.
Well, George, I'm going to stop and say you have a good point, and I'm going to put a question on the flip chart for Zach, which is, Zach, can you write in big, bold letters, what will I lose? What will I lose? I lose.
EU.
Hold on 2 seconds. Yeah, hold on 2 seconds. Just to make sure. What will I lose is perhaps a fear that you've been honest enough to identify in yourself that probably we all have, all human beings. When we're faced with something different, we may immediately go, what is the threat? What will I lose? Not what will I gain? And that might be a human problem we have to overcome. But that's the question, right, George? What will I lose? Yeah, okay. Excellent. Thank you for that. So let's keep going. Do you want to maybe explain here where you see examples of xenophobia right now in our part of the world? Anyone want to try? Zach, why don't you come up, okay? And come sit. Okay, Zach, our good writer on the flip chart, he's now going to explain where he thinks.
Go ahead.
Ask about when you said for a humanity, like, it's natural to ask what will we lose? Should we be asking what will we gain instead of what we will lose?
Yeah, I would hope we could.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what, like, it's better to do. But, like, human nature kind of prevents us from doing that.
Yes, it's human nature. Mm-hmm. It may be human nature. Okay, fair enough. Do you want to add anything else in terms of, what we could be trying to work on to make sure we can think more positively about this?
I don't know.
Okay, think about it. Okay, great. All right. So what will I lose? Now, I'd like to be able to explain to the participants in Hungary and also in Nigeria something about what's happening here. Richard, do you want to come on up, okay? And just because we have, as you know, we have some problems right now in this part of the world with what may be called xenophobia too. So, Richard, you want to?
Okay. So, like, the hatred and fear of other cultures has always been there. It's always prevalent. It's if people are willing to speak up about it. I see, like, going to a place like Trump being elected, for instance, that gives people with hatred a voice and confidence to speak out. And you've seen this before, like with the Rwandan and with
Rwanda? In Rwanda?
Yeah, with the Hutus and Tutsis, and and then genocides like with the Jews and all that. It all starts off with xenophobia, and that's a big problem. And we see it constantly taking more action now than like ever. Because now that there's a word for it, it's like this is a real thing, and we see it happening, but nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Stay, because we may.
Okay.
How do you respond to something like that? That Richard just said that xenophobia can lead to much worse, and that we now have in this part of the world an American president about to take office in January, who has run a campaign in which he said, let's build a wall to keep the Mexican rapists out, let's deport Muslims, and has a vice presidential candidate that is about as white as you're ever going to see. Nice silver hair, a really nice white guy. Lots of white people around him. Doesn't that concern you, that George, that if you fear something like that, it can lead to much worse? What do you think?
Maybe I would say that I think it does lead to much worse. Because I think even in explaining stuff like civil wars, that is the same way civil wars start. Even if it's not within the people from the same country, I think silent wars will always start with things before they become a big thing. Because if I were to explain in terms of maybe tribalism, it always starts with one community feels it's maybe superior to the other, or vice versa, and within a very maybe within a period of time, it becomes worse. That now they'll start raiding, they'll start fighting. There's bloodshed. There's a lot of. So I think all the time it will always lead to much worse unless it is addressed on time, which now unfortunately exactly doesn't happen, because people have a problem actually accepting that there is xenophobia. We talk about it like it's a normal thing, but it's actually not. That's what I think.
Huh. Oh, that's wow.
Yeah.
That's. You want to add, or?
Well, just something that I was thinking of is when you fear something, your first instinct is to fight it, and that's what I think of.
Is to fight it, yes, to fear it. But Rispa, you're saying something kind of quite provocative. You're saying that fear of the other is not natural. Many people would say that the fear of losing something, fearing that a person threatens you, fearing that you're going to lose something important, that's actually not natural. Many people would say it is natural, the human condition. Why do you say it's not natural?
No, what I meant is it is natural, but people do not appreciate that it actually is. Rather, people fear to acknowledge that it is. So they live with it, acting like it's something abnormal, but because of failure to accept it, it actually ends up affecting them, and it will lead, and it can just lead to much worse, maybe even global wars.
Have you ever experienced racism, personally?
Not yet. Not yet. Not that.
Not yet.
But I think it's okay. Not on a personal level, but maybe I have heard stories of people having the same. But I haven't exactly had that experience of someone saying it on my face, or hearing it, or hearing people backbite me or such. I haven't had yet. But yes, I know it is there. Yes.
Because you mentioned a very important word called tribalism. Tribalism. Zach, can you write that down? Tribalism. Write that one in big. I may correct me if I'm wrong, Rispa, but of course in Africa, in many African nations, it's a very, very diverse continent. Hugely diverse. In so many African countries, there are many different cultures and societies, And there's also, as we have here in Canada, for example, with French and English and Indigenous peoples, there's a certain kind of tribalism here. Do you come from a particular tribe in Kenya? Are you associated with a particular tribe?
Yes, I am, but let me allow Wendy to actually take over that. Okay.
Okay, please explain.
Yeah, in our country, tribalism, let's say, it also really leads to corruption. And tribalism is the main thing. For example, our president is the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. He is a Kikuyu. And then the opposition party comes to the Luo tribe. The leader, the Honorable Raila Odinga, he is a Luo. So from that, also the people who, let me say, the other citizens, they really don't really go very well with each other. The relationship is really bad. Can find people, a Luo wouldn't want to relate to a Kikuyu because of the president. The president and the opposition leader. Yes.
Interesting. So, tribalism seems to be a bit of a problem in Kenya.
It is.
Okay. Wait. I'm asking them some tough questions, and they're answering them elegantly, articulately. They're facing it. We'll come back to Budapest. Where's the tribalism here? Where would you say the tribalism is right here? Chris, you want to come, just so they can see? Because maybe part of the problem with the xenophobia is that there's a deeper problem, which is tribalism that exists in the world that we've got to deal with. But, okay, go ahead.
I would identify tribalism in our aspect more to the political parties, where you have your left-leaning, right-leaning, middle-leaning, where you identify yourself on that political scale.
Sure.
I think that's the closest thing that we can really reference to the tribalism aspect that you've shared with us.
Okay. Same in Budapest? Would you say tribalism is more political, or does it go deeper than that into cultures as well?
I mean, if you come to think of it from an evolutionary standpoint, and just for a moment going back to what you were discussing, whether or not fighting something that's alien to you is natural. If you come to think of it, it's called fight or flight. You either face it or you run away. But that mostly applies to individuals. When you're in a group, you most often choose to fight, because in a group you feel stronger. And that is actually also the root of why tribes in the first place came to be evolutionarily, because if you're in a group offers more protection, a group offers the ability to actually face threats rather than to relocate, to run away, to avoid. So today, yeah, perhaps it is more political than anything, but it is more deep-seated than just that.
So you would say, for example, that in Hungary, with this, large 98% of the 47% who voted, by kind of wanting to build a wall and keep the Syrian refugees and the gypsies out, they're trying to flee from a problem, not face the problem. Would you agree with that?
I think they perceive it as fight, not as flight, because they are actively doing something. They're not reacting to a problem, they are proactively preventing it. That would count as fight. But
okay.
I mean, if you come to think of how people today, and just naturally, how people tell stories, for example. Let's say that Lon takes the entire class out for a nice meal to a decent restaurant after the class, right?
Okay. Don't put any ideas in these students, because they're all going to want that. And I have a few coins in my pocket right now, Daniel. That's all I have for a meal. That's it.
I mean,
that's all I have right now.
guaranteed my execution. the least I can. It's going to be my marketing.
Okay, go ahead.
Either way, okay. So let's say that one doesn't take anyone out, but you go out with a friend to a decent restaurant. You have a nice meal. You go home and you remember the experience, and perhaps you will retell the experience if it comes up in a conversation. But you really won't talk about how good the food was, unless it's really some truly amazing restaurant. That's rare. If the food is not good, however, if the food is bad, that you will tell to everybody you meet the next day. So just think about how people very selectively tell stories. If for some reason a refugee or a Roma person or any other minority causes me harm, even if it was accidental or anything else, there's a decent chance that I'm going to tell people about it. However, if the same minority, a guy comes up to me and, I don't know, helps carry my bag up the stairs or something, I won't tell anybody that. I take it as something natural, right?
That we tend to talk about the things we don't like in people as opposed to what we do like? Is that what your point is?
No, what I'm saying is that certain good things are taken for granted, such as a nice meal at a restaurant. It's not something extraordinary that you talk about. If it's bad, however, you are going to talk about it.
Okay. I still don't understand exactly what your point is. Try again.
Right.
Rewind.
My point being is that when it comes to xenophobia, and if you go back to the question, what will I lose or what will I gain?
Yes.
It's only natural to ask what will I lose, because the good I already take for granted.
Okay, I think I get it. Yeah, I think it's only natural to ask what will I lose. That's because that is something that goes deeper. Our fear. Our fear goes deeper. Ooh, I'm going to get... George and Rispa, go ahead, please.
I feel xenophobia is what leads to all this. I feel things like tribalism are a matured form of this fear, a mature way of expressing, of which this fear has expressed itself. In that, out of our natural of being afraid to lose this and that, of being afraid of something foreign, something we're not used to, something that is not the norm.
Yes.
Or even, yes. So I feel once that is established, and once we keep on feeding it, like once we meet someone else and they also share the same fear, and it keeps on feeding and feeding, we tend to resort to things like tribalism, to resort to things like maybe racism, to resort to all these other things. So, yeah, I guess.
Fair enough. Rispa, do you want to add, or Wendy, before we move on? But I thought it looked like you had something to say.
No, I was just agreeing with the fact that, yes, I don't know, the fear of what to lose is more natural than what I would fear, or rather than thinking of what I would gain, because all the time we never really appreciate what we have, and we never really want to think of what we can learn from other people. We have a tendency to be proud and to feel that we are self-sufficient. So the moment there's a fear of having to acknowledge that there could be something better that other people can offer than you have, then that's brings a problem in people's lives. Yeah.
That's a great point. Let's write, Zach, can you write in big letters, right in that empty spot above what will I lose, like write down pride. 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 Yeah. Rispa, you really hit that one on the nail, because what I was hoping that we could do today is explore this problem of xenophobia and try to drill down and understand it more deeply together, and then begin to look at some solutions. But it may be that the problem, deep down, like, you get right to the core of the problem here, might be pride. That everybody wants to believe that they are better somehow, that they know more, that even if we're somehow insecure and screwed up and messed up and all of that, we still believe deep down that we're kind of somehow we know and others don't. Would you say that's true? Rispa?
Yes, that is very important.
Does anyone want to comment before we look at solutions? You know, there's a very famous novel written by in England, which is a country that has certainly had its share of racism and corruption over the years, and what's called the transatlantic slave trade. England. There's a famous novel called Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice. Have you ever heard of that novel, Pride and Prejudice?
Yes.
The book? It's known in English literature. Okay. Would anyone like to comment on this idea of pride? Chris? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just trying to understand, you have to find the roots, I suppose, and I would say the roots for the xenophobia, at least in the Western culture, is definitely much the jobs, because that's where the main political leader, Trump, has gained his grounding, is by establishing that, okay, there's a loss of jobs, they can't provide, and people sort of essentiate their sense of pride with being able to provide to their family, to their community, to their culture. So he's been able to provide them with a solution, you know, quote unquote, build the wall, but he's still giving out a solution to where people don't really have any answers. And I think that his solution is just a little bit more xenophobic than opposed to like looking at what's really causing unemployment, why people have no jobs, where the jobs are going. He's just saying, well, we'll just shove everybody out and all these jobs are going to be flowing in, but that's certainly not the case. There's an actual issue, not just keeping people out.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think you really have to establish the roots of what's causing this.
That's great. And would you say that that solution that you've just said that Trump has offered is very simplistic?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay, so this takes us to the bigger problem here, and then we're going to get to the solution. Chris just said that he thinks that the Trump solution of building a wall to keep people out, or as the Hungarian president has done with a large number of people supporting him, could be viewed as simplistic. It's potentially xenophobic and all of those other things, but it's also simplistic. Now, it's possible that we have a bigger problem here in the global world that is leading to these problems like xenophobia. And I'm going to say that that problem is complexity. And I'd like to spell that. Do you want to just flip that up? What do you think in Nigeria, what do you think the word complexity means? Complexity. If we say that the global world, the world that we have in 2016, in which we're able to now communicate, people can travel, cultures are interacting more, this creates a complex culture. What does complex mean in your estimation? George, Wendy, or what do you think? Oh, we've lost audio. We've lost audio in in Nigeria. Okay, let's try and come back. Go ahead. Try again. Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Maybe something that is difficult. You have to remember so many wrappers before you get to what you have. And I don't know how to exactly talk of complexity here, so maybe I would ask someone else too, but
okay.
I think that
George, go ahead. This related. What I get from it is difficult. Basically, plain and simple, I think difficult to sum it up. And I'd relate it back to the feeling, it's just a difficult feeling. Difficult in the sense that it's hard to even get resolved. Difficult in the sense that it's hard to even understand you and yes.
Okay, good. All right. That's so difficult. I would give you a B for that. Now we've explored this. We've explored this in our class. What complexity? Does anyone want to give a definition of how we define complexity in the class? I can. Do you want? Okay. Daniel, before I do it, how would you define complexity?
Something being complex means that it is made of different yet connected parts.
Exactly. Nice. So George and when Daniel's he's got the A. He's got the A. Yeah, you get 25 Canadian cents. Okay.
Finally, I can buy a car.
Yeah, exactly. This is getting worthless again in the world economy. But anyways, okay. So the actual dictionary definition, if you went to dictionary.com and you looked up complexity, you would see something like Daniel said, which is many interacting parts to produce a whole. I could give you a very simple analogy, really, really simple. Do any of you in Nigeria like to cook? Like, cook or bake or make like nice meals? You like to cook?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And some people like to cook here. Okay. And I'll assume we've talked about food before in Budapest as well, about breakfasts and things like that. So I know you can talk about food. I'm going to suggest something here about complexity. If you were going to make a meal, a really, really good meal, let's say you're going to make a beautiful cake. You're going to make a beautiful cake. And you need, the flour, you need the milk, and you need the sugar, and then you need all sorts of other ingredients, maybe some chocolate, maybe some banana, there might be some vanilla, there might be some cinnamon. It's getting really, really nice, this cake.
Yeah.
A coffee cake. Now, what would happen if you removed the cinnamon or you removed the vanilla? That whole cake would not be as good. And we generally say about complexity that all the interacting parts, the cinnamon, the vanilla, the eggs, the milk, they all come together to produce this really beautiful thing called a coffee cake. Now, you take that analogy and you look at the global world today. We are all interacting. We take away a part, or we say we don't like cinnamon, we don't like vanilla, I get sick from milk, get rid of this coffee cake, I hate coffee cake, I'm scared of coffee cake, don't even mention coffee cake. We might have a problem with things. And so I'm just going to suggest that today's world is very complex, the global world, with all these interacting parts. Complex problems require smart solutions. And maybe building walls is just kind of stupid and simplistic for a complex problem like we have. What do you think about that in Nigeria, George? What do you think? Well, Wendy, go ahead. We can't hear you. We've lost your audio again. Go ahead. Go ahead. Try the answer.
Okay.
Try to answer.
According to me, I think, to my opinion, is the need to that. Always people will always find a way to do something. Yeah. So even to that, the building of the wall, as you have already said, it's very stupid. People will find a way to get in. So it's not even something which is healthy. That is just, according to me, I think it's just a waste of resources. Yeah.
Yes.
Which could be used in the country, in building places, developing the country, rather than building the wall, which obviously people will come. Let's say people go to this country because of various reasons. Others have gone to study, others have maybe have relocated due to their jobs. So it still won't work. It's only a matter of people like finding a way to first get rid of, although yes, it is very difficult to get rid of something, but at least try and reduce. Yeah.
George? Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
I'm really trying to understand the concept of complexity. In that, I still feel people are not ready to accept that we are all in this community, global community together, and they're really not ready to accept that without some members in it, they'll still continue to function. Many believe, the issue of pride comes in place. We might be superior, so we really don't need to pay attention to maybe less of the people, and are really not ready to incorporate some of the foreign, strange ways or cultures or things. So I think in relation to complexity, it still doesn't make a whole. We still lack a certain aspect of this.
Okay, well, good. Thanks. It's hard. These are hard questions. I still have one thing to add before we kind of wrap up in terms of a solution. But in Budapest, do you want to add to this idea that we're living in a complex global community now, so we need smart solutions, not simple solutions?
Right. Yeah, that statement is true, but at the end of the day, I think this comes back to an issue that we've actually talked about before in a global class, or in multiple global classes actually, that you can come up with the absolute best solution anybody has ever created, but do you actually have people that influence change? Do you actually have people to take charge and lead other people towards something that is constructive rather than xenophobic, as you put it? Because that is what Trump has built his entire campaign upon. I would just bring it back to this issue because, if you want, as a short exercise, we could look around in your classroom long in Ottawa, and let's just ask people whether or not they've actually faced xenophobia themselves. And I'm sure there are going to be some cats that has never seen it in person, and see whether or not they can actually solve the problem.
Okay, let's try. Well, because we've got about 10 minutes left, but let's try. So, anyone here have faced, would you say, xenophobia or racism personally, where you felt you were dealing with a person, or where you yourself feared another person of a different culture? Yes?
Yeah.
Tracy, you want to try? Can you come? We have one student here, Tracy, who's been listening. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Just so we can hear you clearly. Okay? Come sit. Tracy. Well, whether you could say whether you yourself have feared another culture, or whether you have been the target of somebody who feared you, or even hated you because of the color of your skin.
I can say yes that I have faced racism myself. Growing up, even as a younger child, like in school, in elementary school I attended at that time was predominantly white, so I pretty much stood out. And I did face, I guess, in a case like that, xenophobia, you'd guess, not knowing how to identify with someone that looks different than you.
Yeah.
So I guess that was something that was a concern for other students. Like, here is someone that looks different than me. How do we relate? So that was something that, as a student, as a child growing up,
Yeah.
it made you question yourself.
Oh, really?
To say, why, I guess, person looking at you differently because of your skin. Because it's growing up, you just you're the one who stood out.
Sure.
So it's I don't know the words that would be said to you. So
Sure. No, this is great. I just want to make sure that can everyone in Budapest, you can hear what Tracy's saying, and because this is excellent. Okay, I have a question, but do any of you want to ask Tracy questions? She's basically just said she went to a school where people were largely not black. They were white. you stood out there because your skin is black. Do any of you want to ask Tracy about this or comment before I or others may ask?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just
yeah. Oh, you're frozen. Oh, you'll come back. Daniel, go ahead and ask anyways. We can hear him? Oh, he's frozen. Just when we want to hear him. Oh, he'll come back. Budapest. Okay. Budapest will come back. Daniel had a question. George, Wendy, Rispa, the others, Owen, would you like to, is there anything you'd like to ask Tracy?
Okay, I would like to ask in which way she stand out among the rest? In which way did you stand out?
Okay. Way standing out would be I was the only one. Well, I shouldn't say only one. Like, you could count literally how many students of color were at the school that was black. I'd say probably 5. So it stood out in the crowd, pretty much.
So then identify the black child from they allocate you as the black one in the class.
Yes. Because like in my class, yes, I was the only black person in my class. Yeah.
Daniel, go ahead now. Thanks, Owen. Daniel, yeah, you're back. Go ask what you were going to ask.
Yeah, just one very simple, very quick question. So you felt racism literally on your own skin, and my question is, theoretically, if you were given the solution, the perfect solution to both racism and xenophobia, do you feel that you yourself could make a difference as an individual? Do you feel that you yourself could influence change, provided that you were given the solution?
Somewhat, I believe so. For that to start within the home, from children growing up, just to realize that it's not a matter of someone's skin color, it's a matter of the person themselves. So you can't just judge literally by just looking at a person and automatically say you don't like them because they don't look like you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are no wrong answers. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great. Does anyone want to talk to? Now this, I'm going to tell you something. What we have right now, as we come down to the final 10 minutes, is exactly what a global class should be near the end. We are really getting some great insight from the courage that Tracy has. And so let's ride this wave, surf this board right now with Tracy. This is a person who's helping us understand something about identity. Do you want to write down in big identity, like really big, Zach? IDENTITY. Tracy, you mentioned something that kind of makes me think that this question would be a good question to ask. Did you ever wonder during those times, who am I? Am I a white person or am I a black person?
Well, I knew that I was a black person.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, in question, who am I? That is a question, yes. The question, like, who am I? Like, where do I stand within the world, so to speak? Because it's growing up and seeing, like, I mean, going home, I would be amongst everyone that looks like me.
Sure,
but
sure.
going to school, it would be different.
So how did you handle that? That's kind of a bit of a disruption, isn't it? Or no?
Going to school would sometimes, but then you learn to deal. I guess that's where you would say resilience or complexity issue comes into place at a very young age, knowing how to deal with that situation. And then I had my siblings, like I was the youngest of the bunch, so they sort of, I guess, had my back, so to speak, to help me through, because they were going through the same thing also. So,
yeah. You know, guys, Tracy has mentioned a really important word, and we're going to come to really the conclusion of the class, which is what I promised you we would come to. And Zach, could you write down this word, please? Even bigger, like write resilience. Just write it. Resilience. Now, Tracy, would you be able to explain to the participants in Nigeria and also in Budapest, why would you say resilience would be something that would be part of the way you dealt with this complex situation?
This resilience being able to like bounce back from that, like how to deal, not just letting it take over, but learning how to come back from that and say, okay, it's not just about your skin color, it's about who you are, and to just continue on, not worry what people think about you.
And adapt.
That too,
and
yes.
adapt to the situation. What do you think in Nigeria, for example, resilience? Have you ever had a moment in your life that you felt was very complex and required you to deal with it by having to be resilient? What do you think?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think yes.
Go ahead.
Right now, we are from Kenya and we're in Nigeria. We need to adapt to the cultural difference, how people look at you, the language. So you have to adapt, to be elastic to the sudden change in culture, the way people look at you, how you talk to them, how you respect people, because it's different in different places. So right now, all of us, we are dealing with resilience. We're actually embracing it so that we will not have problems with the natives of the country.
Exactly. That's great. Owen, Zach, make sure you add the N in resilience. Just slip it in between the E and the C. I think you were going so fast. There we go. Thank you. Excellent. Resilience. Yeah, it's right in there. Okay, excellent. That is a really good example. I didn't realize it. Maybe you did, but these are Kenyans who are in Nigeria. I mean, I knew that. But so for all of you, you're having to adapt in the same way that Tracy had to adapt to being in a culture that was largely white. You're having to adapt to a different culture there, right? Yeah. And resilience. Okay. Daniel, in Budapest, any example that you would give of complexity? Complex world requires resilience. Requires resilience to be able to manage it. Any personal examples you could give? He's thinking.
I mean, you know, this is one of those moments where I don't want to give an example that would really just dwarf in comparison. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think resilience is something that people have to find within themselves one way or another, sooner or later in life, because it doesn't matter whether or not the world thinks that your struggles are either big or small. If you believe them to be your primary struggle, they can be as big for you as really anything. So I think at one point in everybody's life, or at multiple points, they will have to have resilience. They will have to have the both the willpower and the drive to just keep going, even if it's a struggle. To really have, you know, both a goal in mind that you want to reach and perhaps even something that you want to get away from along the way. So yeah, I don't really want to give a personal example, but I think most people can you know, associate themselves with the word resilience.
Fair enough. Thanks. That's great. We're kind of winding things down with the class. Is there anything any of you would like to add about this idea of resilience, complexity? Because Tracy really gave a great story connecting things. Is there anything you'd like to add, anybody, before we have Katie come a little closer? Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe with this global class will help not only help people in our communities, but the entire global communities all over the world. Will help them like build bridges instead of walls and become more united with each other instead of against.
Sure. But that takes a lot more work. It may take more work to build bridges than walls. That might be the question to ask, is does it take more work to build bridges and walls? Is it not just easier, more simple to build a wall and be done with it? Perhaps building bridges is a complex thing that requires us to take time, but it's the better way. Now, let me stop for a second, because we're essentially at the end of the class, and we've come to a really good point in terms of some insight that a student, Tracy, was able to lead us to. And we'll leave this to another class about the EU. It just gets us a bit too much into politics, and it's a longer discussion.
That was just a bridge. That would have been my suggestion as a bridge.
As a bridge?
Because the EU was an attempt at bridging the European countries.
Well, it just might lead us into a longer discussion about the European Union. And okay, so I'd like to give everyone a chance in each location for a final word before we wrap up. But I first want to just say that it's been a real pleasure for me always to be part of a class with students from different countries like this, to explore this class, a pretty sensitive issue, xenophobia. But we were able to kind of drill down more to understand that perhaps underneath that is a bigger problem, which is trying to manage the complexity of this global world where we have all these cultures interacting now. And perhaps what we need to do is develop more resilience to be able to handle this complexity, because if we have more resilience, we might come up with smarter solutions, because we'll be stronger. And generally, good solutions come from strong people, not from weakness. It comes from strength. So maybe that's what we need, is the strength from resilience to be able to manage these difficult decisions and difficult choices. But let me leave the final words ultimately to the students. And I'll let Budapest speak first, then we'll come to Nigeria. You can have the final word, and then we'll hopefully meet in another class. So Daniel Sibis, Daniel Lantos, anything you want to add? Final words.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No, we were just fighting about who gets the last word. I want to get the last word, but he doesn't want to.
He doesn't want the last word? Okay. What do you think?
Yeah, anyway, I think most of the important things have been said, and just one thing. I think this is one of those topics that you can actually have really interesting discussions about, not just in within the limitations of a classroom, or rather a global classroom, but basically at any point in your life, or in any place you are. If somebody from Canada or Nigeria wants to actually organize something, perhaps get in contact with other students from Hungary, from any other country, I'd be happy to lend a hand and help organize that.
Thank you. Great, Daniel. Thank you. We'll definitely follow up with you for sure on that. But let's see, in Nigeria, I see Rispa listening, and George, is there anything you'd like to add to what Daniel said? Perhaps organizing something, or just any final word?
Maybe I'd say first that we are really happy, or speaking on my behalf, I'm very excited. It's my first global class, and I think the issue we were addressing, the resilience, xenophobia, pride, complexity, I think all those words at the end of the day, I think we need knowledge and also exposure, so that we can be able to know how to handle situations when they come, because at the end of the day, there's no way we are going to expect that we all going to interact with Kenyans or with Canadians or people from Hungary, or maybe we're only going to interact with one type of food or education, or people with the same level of intelligence as you. Every day it's going to be different. We'll meet people who are better than us, will be better than others. What we need is maybe exposure, knowledge, and even civic education on how to be handling complexities of life, and to know that life is not a straight line. Concerning what Daniel said, I think I totally support him. This is a discussion that could go on and on and on. Definitely, we are not done. I don't think we're done here.
Lovely, Rispa. That's really well. George, go ahead. Yes, please. Yeah.
To just sum up everything, I guess, I just add the word being optimistic. Basically, being optimistic in the sense that if we get to see what we will gain, let's just not focus our minds on what we are losing, but otherwise, what is it that we're going to gain from other experiences, other foreign things. It could be that they're there to make us better. So basically, if we put it to ourselves, just want to gain, we'll be able to do better, I guess.
Lovely. Yes, Wendy, please. Yes.
Yeah, to add on, like from this, the global class, when we are here, we are able to learn. We're able to know the current things that really affect the whole world, the globe itself. So from here, and as we know, one way of solving issues is by creating awareness. From the information we get here, we'll be able to go out and share the information with other people. Word spread. If you tell this person in a good way, you tell them these and these happened. So they're able to spread the word, and it will also lead to one way of helping us solving our current issues in the world. Thank you.
Wendy, thank you for that, and I actually would like to simply just repeat back what Rispa and George very wisely said, which is it takes too much to write it now, and we're running out of time. If we were to write this on the flip chart, I would write down knowledge, exposure, optimism. You know, these are really, and it's through those three things that were just mentioned by you, Rispa and George and Wendy, but critically it's knowledge. It's exposing ourselves to more new things. Don't be afraid. Be optimistic. You're not going to get hurt. You know, don't be scared. And if you can just allow yourself to do that, we might be able to solve some problems in a much more creative and smart way, and not have to resort to these simplistic solutions, as Chris said, which is, you know, what we did 2,000 years ago in primitive societies. You build walls around cities. You know, China built a big wall around to keep out the Mongolians. You know, the Sumerians built big walls, and walls were built in Africa too, and that's way back in the old days. We don't do that anymore. So maybe it is just about that simple thing, knowledge, exposure, that will allow us to build the bridges. Anyways, I'm going to end it there. We're running out of time. We're 5 minutes over. I want to thank you for those wonderful comments in Nigeria. I wish you the best. We all do with your studies in Nigeria. I hope we can participate in another global class with you. Of course, Daniel, the two Daniels, thanks guys for getting through some turbulence with the audio. And as always, thanks here for, you know, another really good conversation, you know. We'll see you soon, okay? Take care.